Have I got a terrific guest today? I am so excited because today starts doing the show every day at a regular time. So from now on, the show will be at 11 a.m. Pacific time. The only time there'll be an exception is once in a while, there's a doctor that's in a place like New Zealand and Australia. If I were to do it at 11 a.m., that would be 3 a.m. for them. So on June 15th, when I have Dr. Greg Fitzgerald, it will be at 3 p.m. But if you sign up for my mailing list, we send out every day who the guest is, what the time, or if you subscribe to me on YouTube as well, that's a great way to stay connected and be notified whenever I go live. So who better to kick off the celebration of a regular time than pretty much everybody's favorite guest? If you go to my YouTube channel, you'll see I've probably interviewed or have close to 600 YouTubes now. Who have I interviewed the most? That tells you something. Every time I get to interview him, it's like the night before you go to Disneyland, because it's just, he's brilliant. He's so fun to talk to. It's just, everybody loves him. And it's such a privilege to be able to talk to him as often as I do. I thought this one from Mike, we got a lot of men wrote in questions too. What's interesting, he said, I keep hearing about this COVID-19, sort of like the freshman 10, the amount of weight people are gaining sheltering at home. I keep hearing that people are overeating because of the stress of world affairs or because they are isolated and trapped at home. Is this a real thing, or are some people just using the pandemic as an excuse to be self-indulgent? Wouldn't these people have gained weight anyway, even if all was well in the world?
Well, this is a very good question, and I'm sure that the answer is complex and individual. So I'm pretty confident there'll be no net weight gain in the United States as a result of COVID. That's because pretty much the macronutrient and fiber content of the food that people eat pre-COVID and during COVID are going to be about the same thing. Now, some of the things are going to change. So instead of eating a chili cheeseburger at Chili's, they're eating, macaroni and cheese out of Kraft Foods at home. But from the macaroni, from the overall caloric density and food content is basically the same. So people's taste preferences don't change, and I don't think that we're going to see any impact there. Now, given the fact that there's no macro change in the U.S. or anywhere else, as far as that goes, I'm sure that there's no particular difference. Now the question is, what about specific individuals? Now, in this case, of course, there's going to be individuals that use this time to not stare at the TV screen and panic. Rather, they understand that we've got some handicaps on our abilities to do various things, and it's time to take care of business. And so they decide this is when they're going to learn to cook good food. This is when they're going to start an exercise program. This is when they're going to get themselves organized. They're going to make the best of it, and they're going to drop 10 pounds during COVID. Okay. Somebody else is going to possibly get derailed and feel like they have to hang on every word of the news media. They're going to eat that emotional junk food, and they're going to feel like, well, sort of, what's the use? We have to just sit here and endure. And now they're going to, I don't know, eat handful after handful of goldfish while they watch the fiasco. So individuals are going to sort of respond to changing situations in a way that's consistent with their personalities and their motives for that time in their life. So I have no doubt that there's going to be some folks that are going to, quote, use this as an excuse to go self-indulgent. There's going to be other folks that are going to use this as a very unusual opportunity. One thing that I found that surprised me a little bit in the middle of COVID is that I've got a couple of friends in the business of trying to help people really clean house in terms of their bodies. So Nathan Gershfeld at Fasting Escape in Los Angeles and Alan Goldhammer up in True North in Northern California. Both of them have been busy. It's like, isn't that interesting? So even though people are supposed to be staying at home, a lot of them said, well, I'll just soon stay at home in a place where I can possibly do a water fast or a juice fast, and I need a bunch of really healthy food and get my act together. It's like those businesses have contained because some people have used this as if I'm going to be forced on a timeout anyway and I can't be doing my job, now is the time to actually use this as an opportunity to take care of business. I had to shut the window because I got a neighbor that's very handy 2 doors down in the cul-de-sac, and he's been working every day This is not a his house continues to pass mine in terms of its beauty, because he keeps doing projects. So good for him. So this is the positive way to sort of deal with a situation like this. Let's look at it as an opportunity rather than as an excuse.
That's great. Well, Antonia says you're cute, and Daryl says he loves when you crack yourself up and throw your head back and laugh.
Maybe I'll have to do it side to side so I mix up my strategy.
Yeah. Well, you look like Alan Alda when you do that. That is great.
I'll take that a little bit.
So now we're getting into some fun territory, dating, because I know you talk about that. By the way, if you haven't listened to the Beat Your Genes podcast, it airs live every Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time. You can listen to it on iTunes, Spotify, Blog Talk Radio, and he co-hosts now with Dr. Jen Hawk. It's fabulous, and there's almost 200 episodes, I believe. So this is from a listener of the show. She wanted to remain anonymous, and here's what she says. I am a 62-year-old divorced woman, no kids. I'm a community college professor. I had a weight problem from age 6 to 57. I've been on a whole food plant-based diet for 9 years. I've been consistently unlucky in love, with relationships never working out. It has been more than 10 years since I've been on a date. I get terribly hurt and I feel like I have been in hiding, licking my wounds. But I look better now than ever. How can I get over the hurt and get back out there?
Well, it begins with actually the mechanical processes of solving the problem. So I'm remembering one of my favorite movies of the last 15 years or so was a movie called Sideways, where this sort of goofy sweet guy is writing a novel that's going to be his big thing in the world. It gets rejected by the publisher. And he doesn't really have a lot else going in his life. And he's got a friend named Jack who's just really cool and handsome and just has everything. And Jack says, Miles, don't worry about the publisher. Who cares what they say? You got to just get it out there. And it's such a beautiful, warm thing for his naive, handsome, has everything friend to say. But to Miles, who's got more brains, he's thinking, what do you mean get it out there? Like there's no way for him to get it out there. Now, there could be in today's world, but that wasn't true when they made Sideways. So in the same way, I'm not sure what it means to get out there in the dating world if you're 62. In other words, we have to solve the mechanical problem of what specifically do we mean. And that is, if you continue to be in the same places and do the same things that you've been doing, then we're likely to get the same result that we've been getting for the last several years, which is isolation. So instead, what we want to do is we want to take advantage of the technological advances that have taken place. So this is what Match.com and Our Time and all these things are for. They're not dating sites, they're introduction sites. That's what's actually taking place there. These are ways for you to meet people that are nearby you in a way that you would have never known that they were single and available. And so this is a way for you to fix the problem. So I can remember 20 years or so when I came out to California from Texas, and I went about a year and a half without a date. And I was, of course, living with Alan Goldhammer in his basement writing The Pleasure Trap. Alan didn't want me to go out on a date anyway. It was like, the taskmaster checked in with me every day to see what progress was made. But finally, I decided I need to do something, and I went online, and Alan and I did it together. And he said, let's see what's happening. And there it was. There was Match.com had been born. And so Match.com was the conduit for me to join the world again after a long-term relationship, that caused me to move to California, that had broken up. So this is the way to do it. This is certainly a way. Would there be other ways? Yeah. Join, line dancing class, country western dancing, Sierra Club. Of course, there would be other things that you could do. But one of the things that you can do is do the mechanical process of gritting your teeth and joining an online service that caters to your cohort, the kind of people and the kind of relationships. If you're a community college professor, sounds like quite conservative in your personal behavior, obviously, and intelligent and accomplished, etc., and high conscientiousness, probably Tinder isn't for you. Okay, so let's take the steps to put yourself in a position to meet somebody in order to make your life a better thing. Okay.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to take this question live, even though it is on COVID, because we get this a lot. Caroline says her parents want her to visit. Her siblings won't allow it since they're afraid the parents will get it. They're in their 60s, but overall healthy. Should people be still kind of staying in place?
Oh, I think that I have a few things to say about this, and obviously everybody's going to have to run their own cost-benefit analysis, and so what counts is what information that you have that you feed into the cost-benefit analysis. Just sort of the nature of the cost-benefit analysis is what's sort of driving motivation and how it works, and the importance of the details about how we figure out those parameters in order to make decisions. Those are some issues that Dr. Jen Howk and I have spent quite a lot of time. We have a new section to our website that's coming out soon. It's called the Living Wisdom Library. And in that, we have a series of new lectures that essentially explore how to look at this and and essentially all human dilemmas and problems through the lens of cost-benefit analysis. And what is that? What does that mean? It means that this is what every creature does with every second of their lives, is that they're running cost-benefit analysis. They're attempting to try to figure out what's in their best interest, and oftentimes the problems are multidimensional. There are many different values and many different threats that are involved. So in this case, the lady wants to visit her parents, who she probably hasn't seen in a while since COVID. At the same time, she's worried about carrying COVID to them. And then she's also worried about her siblings, that they would be upset during the process or knowing that the process is taking place. So how upset should she be, or how concerned should she be about her siblings being upset? So one of the things we do is we reverse engineer the problem, and we say, well, let's look at the very worst case scenario. So the very worst case scenario is that you go there, your parents get COVID from you as carrier, and they die. Okay. Now, how do you feel? Answer: unbelievable, as bad as it gets. Okay. And the siblings, i.e., you have a never forgiving situation. So that's our worst case scenario, or I guess even worse than that is that you die yourself. So let's anchor down. We begin with where the cost benefit analysis is sort of, there's a flashing red light on this cost benefit analysis that's actually what's rattling around the unconscious or semi-conscious is the worst case scenario. And it always is. So that's the source of people's anxiety in situations about everything. When your boss sort of looks at you a little annoyed, the little red light on the cost benefit analytics system is, ooh, he's going to fire me, or she's going to fire me. That's what it is. So what we want to do is, rather than let that red light sort of diffusely dominate a person's emotional tone while they try to guess as to what's in their best interest, what we want to do is actually we want to stick parameters on top of the worst case scenario to try to see just how big of a threat it is. So now we want to look at it. So we want to look at, for example, where is she located? What is her parents' health? What do we know about the situation? And probably, depending upon where she is, where her parents are, and how healthy they are, it's probably extremely safe, and it's absurd to be staying away at this point. That's what the numerical indices would tell us. Now, that doesn't, so in other words, it would be perfectly responsible to visit your 60-something parents who are healthy right now. Now, are there things that you could do to mitigate the risk? Certainly, you could take a test. So you could take a test the day before you go visit your parents, or 2 days before, or whatever it is, and get the feedback that says you're clear and you're not carrying the virus. Okay? So now we've done an extremely responsible thing to vastly reduce the statistical likelihood of the worst case scenario. Okay? So now that's something that we could do. Now, what does that do for our siblings who might be rubbing their hands in anxiety about this? we could tell them, yes, I think that they're really safe. All the evidence indicates they're safe. Health professionals would say that they're safe. However, I am taking this extra precaution. We're going to socially distance when I'm there. And I also took the test and it turns out I'm negative. Okay. Oh, well, they're still worried and upset. Oh, well, okay. This is where we have to run the CB in our own mind about how valuable it would be for us and our parents to have that interaction versus how much anxiety is taking place in the heads of our siblings. We can't live our lives as emotional hostages to people who have not necessarily done and computed the cost benefit the way we have. And so it's not incumbent upon us to go on bended knee to their lives so that they don't have any anxiety. Our job is to be reasonable about what it is that we're doing and to sort of take their feelings into account, examine those feelings and figure out why they exist, and then mitigate whatever risk it is that's involved, obviously, as we would anyway. But we might take the extra step of testing ourselves before we visit our parents. So this is how it is that we solve dilemmas like this. Yeah, that's how I would do it. I wouldn't stop myself at this point. There's also some, incidentally, AJ, there's some really nice looking evidence that is now floating around about COVID. The evidence is that there's very strong evidence that indicates that COVID-19 is mutating, and it's mutating to a more benign form. This is apparently a very widely known phenomenon in virology, that something starts out as very nasty, and then particularly a respiratory virus, that it's in the virus's sort of genetic mathematical best interest to not be as lethal. And in other words, it replicates more easily as it's a more upper respiratory phenomenon. And so it winds up being a better copying mechanism for the genes involved, rather than being a very brutal virus that will kill its host. So this is a sort of a bit of good news about how it is that this works. And apparently there are many experts around the world right now that are convinced that this is happening fairly substantially with respect to COVID. So we are hopefully in a situation, as COVID passes over the United States here in the next few weeks and is almost done, that when it reemerges in the future, it's likely to reemerge in a much muted form that is much less lethal. So that's apparently already happening. So anyway, I think that time to visit your beloved folks if you want to, and hug them as you will, depending upon how everybody feels about it and maybe what your test says.
They love you, except that you're a Virgo. So I don't know if you can see all these nice comments that you're getting, but in the hearts.
Yeah, I can't see them, but it's all good, AJ.
Okay, great. So this question from Janice starts out with, I may need to make an appointment. And so because she actually said that, and I think maybe she does, I am going to just post a link right here for people to make a private consultation with you. And they can also, of course, see Dr. Howk. So this specific question to Janice, I have heard variations of, and that's why I'm going to ask it. And this is what she says. And I know her, so I know at least most of this to be true. She says, my husband and I have been eating whole food plant-based for 8 years, and we've improved it with Chef AJ's Ultimate Weight Loss Wave Eating for the last 5. I have learned how to describe my way of eating thanks to Dr. Lisle. Initially, I was trying to convert everyone to eat this way because of the health benefits we experienced, and that did not work at all. I have softened and would say things like, it's working for us, and comments like that. Last December, my husband had a stroke. He is slowly healing, and we have tightened the screws with our eating. But what do I tell people? I feel I can no longer tout the health benefits of this way of eating. I have been told things like, well, if you eat so well, why did Tony have a stroke? Being a hyper-conscientious nutcase, I feel like I have to say something, but what?
Yeah, it's interesting. I always have to back the camera up and try to figure out, obviously, first how we got in this situation, and also remembering that anybody that is confronting us with anything like this is an outlier in terms of their personalities. So we got to keep that in mind about who we're dealing with. We're not trying to argue this in front of a jury and win the fight in our village as to what the right way is to go. So I'm trying to put myself in that situation, and probably my response would be, well, I think we maybe didn't do well enough. Yeah, there's we could have done better, and we probably should have done.
Wow. I expected that's a very good answer. I just don't know why I expected something longer, because I had something similar happen to me. I've been teaching cooking for 20 years now. And in one of my very first classes at Whole Foods in 2003, there were 77 people, and a gentleman it was not a gentleman, but a man raised his hand. I thought he was going to ask about the recipe. And he literally said, if the vegan diet's so great, why are you so fat? I didn't know you at the time. What do you say to that? I felt like saying, must have been something I ate, but how it's really difficult sometimes when people are confrontational like that.
Yes, and once again, that's a really rare instance where we're in a large situation and it's emotionally charged. There's the disagreeable human has an utter lack of tact, and so this puts a speaker in difficult circumstances. All one can say is, well, I could probably do a better job than I'm doing. Obviously, I've always got more to learn. So as there's our natural tendency, and this is I could go on and speculate about why this is. I think I have on Beat Your Genes at some point. That in an argument, we feel a panic to win it. There's the village that's around us that we were designed by nature to care about so much, because the village was the only people in your life, and your whole life was attached to them and their opinions of you. And so if there's an argument and someone is essentially criticizing you right in front of the village, our desire is to win the argument. It's not to have rational discourse. It's actually, we're designed with very relentless rhetorical devices in us to think about where the weakness is in their argument and pound on that, to figure out how we're going to criticize them, etc. In other words, we feel a surge of adrenaline and we feel under attack, and like an animal under attack, we're dangerous. And so that's human nature, because the village is not going to last. They're not that interested in our fight with this person. And so as a result, they're not interested in a long, drawn out, explanation and slicing and dicing of the issues. They want to just see who wins. And that's why it is that we are built with these rapid fire, intense responses under criticism. Now, it turns out that very often, let's talk about what the very best move is versus the very worst move or the worst outcomes. The very best move for people, the most satisfying move, would be to take out an axe and just cleave their argument in one swoop.
Or just cleave them. I would like to sometimes just cleave them.
I wasn't going to say that, AJ, but you just go right ahead. So it's on you. Okay, so this is sort of our nature, that we would like to win this right then because their attack is unjust and they're out of line and they're essentially threatening our status in the village. And so our desire is to eliminate them or annihilate them in an instant. If you can, then you probably will. So your good friend, Steve Middleman, the comic, could probably do that with just about anybody. In other words, because he as a professional comic and a wit like that, he can probably find exactly the right response in 2 seconds and deliver it. Okay, I can't. I'm not a professional comic. I'm not a professional, attorney or arguer or anything like that. I don't have that. So what I learned was I actually learned a system for dealing with hecklers. And I learned this from the cognitive behavioral therapist, David Burns. And the first thing he says is, the first thing you do is you thank them for their comment. okay? And the second thing you do is you say that they've got a point. And the third thing that you say is that, you know, more research would need to be done on the topic. And the fourth thing that you say is you could talk to them afterwards. That is the anti-heckler technique. So what we see in the anti-heckler technique is the outline of this is that the person who's making that comment is inherently status deficient. It doesn't mean that they are not an aggressive SOB, but they are feeling a status deficiency. So they're attempting to get a bunch of status in the village by taking us down. So the first thing we do is we give them a little bit of status, right when our instincts say that we want to take out the axe and chop their status to bits. So we're going to go against instinct and we're going to say, I hear your comment. Now you've got a point. Okay. You know, the truth is that I've got more to learn about this. And I am learning and I'm trying to share that. But if you've got any additional ideas, maybe we ought to meet afterwards and you can fill me in. Okay. That would have been the structure of what could have been said to that individual. Now, that takes the wind out of their sails, but it doesn't create an adversarial situation. So I would say of the times that I've been attacked as a lecturer, which have probably happened not that often, maybe 15 or 20 times in 25 years, I would say that I have successfully done that about 50% of the time. And it worked perfectly. And the other 50% of the time, AJ, I went after them with an axe. And it's not good. In other words, even when I win, I lose because I spend the next week with that conversation and that incident rattling around in my head. I worry what other people think of me. I think about, you know, the whole situation. I got dragged into the mud by essentially an emotional thug, and I bid on it. Okay, so this is something that we try to learn. That's why we call our podcast, Jen and I, we call it Beat Your Genes with Nathan Gersfeld. It's all about trying to figure out what's in your nature that you might be able to do better than your nature. Okay, and including eating natural food when the junk food is here, including getting ourselves away from the TV when it's full of exciting and disturbing carnage, and instead go out in the backyard and put some fertilizer around the roses and put on Glenn Miller. Okay, so in other words, what are we going to do to beat our genes when someone attacks us? If we acknowledge them and their point, see that there's got some truth in it, that we have more to learn, that there's that we don't know it all, and that hey, things could be done better, then it's done, and we don't wind up having to replay this thing 150 times. So that's the idea. Anti-heckler technique, David Burns in Feeling Good, the biggest best-selling book in cognitive behavioral therapy in history.
I actually saw you once at a McDougall Advanced Study Weekend being challenged by, I'm not going to say the name, but a prominent person, and you handled it very well. And then I've also seen you angry at one time, and I don't want to ever see that guy again. So I just want to.
Yeah, it's a fork in the road. It's sometimes I take the wrong fork.
Right. Well, this is an interesting post from Jessica, who's watching live on this question. She said, Chuck of Brand New Vegan, I believe that's a blog, had a stroke eating this way, but his doctor said if he hadn't been eating this way, it could have been much worse. So maybe when the guy called me fat, and said, if the vegan diet's so great, why are you so fat? I could have said, you should have seen me before I was vegan.
There was more to learn. And the truth is, if we go back and we do a post-mortem of that incident, the anti-heckler technique would have been right on target. In other words, hey, you got a point. I can't quite thank you for that comment, but I can agree that you got a point. And the truth is, I've got more to learn. And that's my job, is to improve. Done. Okay. So now we took care of it. Now you still walk away with the hurt feelings, but there was more to learn. And sooner or later you did, AJ, and you learned and you did a great job.
Thank you. So we've got so many questions. Do you have a preference? We have one about teenagers and antidepressants. We have one about reintroducing foods. And we have one from a husband whose wife is obsessed with 30-year-old something YouTubers and taking medical advice from them. Is there one that you prefer me to ask?
No, just start at the beginning.
Okay, I'll ask this one because I not that I favor men. It's just that it's so nice that when men, writing questions, I assume
Yes.
it's a man because the name is Connor.
Yeah.
My wife, who turns 50 this year, is obsessed with these thin, pretty 30-something YouTubers who lost weight using the starch solution. Many of them include things in their diets like alcohol, peanut butter, avocado, breads, and flours that work for their young age and metabolism that never have worked for my wife. They have no medical degree, so why does she listen to them instead of Dr. McDougall?
Oh, that's a really good question. The answer is that people are looking to, this is an imitative function in humans. So we're designed by nature to imitate successful people. That's what we do. Success leaves clues. And so we think that if we use the oil of Olay that Christy Crawford uses, then that's us. I can remember as a kid, one of my little heroes for a while as a young teenager was Joe Namath, who seemed to be tremendously cool. And I can't remember what he had. I think he had some kind of shoes, and that I was interested in having those shoes. So one of the all-time iconic commercials in history is an incredibly cute, heartwarming commercial called Be Like Mike. And it's the story of Michael Jordan. And you can see these little tiny kids. This unbelievable little kid that's about 2 years old is trying to dribble a basketball, and Michael's guarding him. And he's, the interaction between them is priceless. And so the Be Like Mike. So that's what she's doing. She's trying to be like Michelle or whoever is the pretty thin 30-year-old is. And so it's understandable. It's an imitative function. And I have, obviously at my age, my most of my all of my female friends are over 40, and so the humor is whenever there's an ad on a billboard or in a magazine or on internet or anything that's entertaining, and I'm with one of these people, the joke is that I want to know what the magic thing is that she's putting on her face. It's like, well, what she's putting on her face is 25-year-old skin. That's what she's putting on her face. So, but the notion is that we could buy it and that we could imitate it, and that we would have similar outcomes. That's a natural human imitative function. Imitation in decision making is actually seen not only in humans, it's actually seen throughout the animal kingdom. It's been seen in animals as simple as literally imitative mating choices in tropical fish. Okay, so in other words, if a few females start to go for one of the tropical fish, the other females will start to go for that same guy, and it's an amazing thing to see the importance of imitative decision making in nature. So that's what he's saying. He's seeing his wife getting trapped by a natural neural circuit, which is follow the success and try to imitate it, try to be like Mike or try to be like Michelle. It's not her fault. She's just got a little hook in her mouth, and she's not apparently going to be able to eat the peanut butter on the Ezekiel bread and stay thin. So maybe she needs to be listening to AJ instead.
You just basically blew the lid off Madison Avenue. You just explained advertising. Incredible, because the reason this cream works is because the person's skin is 25 years old. And maybe the reason this diet works is because the person's body is 25 years old.
Of course. You bet.
Oh my God, the questions. I mean, I just had my assistant, well, actually not my assistant, my husband, it's like hot off the presses. So until I have a chance to read this one, I'm going to go with one that I already have. And this is long, but I think it's a good one. It's from somebody that's a nurse practitioner. I'm just going to paraphrase. Her name is Tamara, and she's a nurse practitioner in an endocrinology practice where the doctor does try to use lifestyle medicine to help the people either prevent them from going on insulin or get them off the insulin. But a lot of the people they work with, they're old, they have a lot of body fat, and they're, as she says, brittle diabetics. And what she's saying is, she says, Dr. Lisle, I'm a huge fan of your podcast, and I do believe I understand the concept you teach called the ego trap, that if we set the bar too high, people will fail and kick over the table and not even try. But what do I do with my patients for whom just doing a little bit better isn't good enough? For example, they're brittle diabetics. They've been on insulin for years, and a B or even a B plus diet is not enough to reverse their insulin resistance. When you identify somebody that does need to be perfect, is there a way to work with them to keep them out of the ego trap? Does this question make sense to you?
Yes, it does. However, I would tell her that probably in an outpatient practice with normal folks, that even with a doc that's there doing his or her best to try to encourage lifestyle medicine, the success rate we would expect to be very low. Let's keep the bar reasonable for her. I've said that making these kinds of dietary changes, these are unusual decisions for people to make, to go against your natural proclivities in this environment with this kind of opportunity for the food that's available. This is, there's nothing wrong with an individual that does this all wrong. In other words, their nervous systems are functioning perfectly as they chomp on a cheeseburger. They're following their instincts, and to get them to not follow their instincts and go directly against their instincts is an unusual life path. It takes unusual personalities along with unusual motivation. Now, if they are in there with big trouble, then they may have unusual motivation. Good, but that doesn't mean they have unusual personalities. So your task is to essentially save your energy for the individuals that have the biggest chance. That means we sprinkle the information on everybody's head. And then once in a while, somebody takes the bait, okay? They're more interested. They want to know more. Those are the individuals that we spend our time and energy encouraging and explaining how, the magnitude of what really needs to be done in order for them to see a large and very meaningful effect. Small changes will get small improvements. Large changes can get very large improvements with that population. And that's what we explain, okay? Some people are not interested at all in making changes. In fact, most people would not be interested in making changes. The fact that they would like to all be healthy and that they could all be healthy is not relevant, okay? This is one of the great puzzles of angst and consternation and confusion in this whole lifestyle arena is the fact that even number one, that the message can't get out very far. It has a very limited distance that this message can travel in terms of what percentage of people are receptive at all. And the second issue is even those that are receptive and interested and have some motivation, a modest percentage of people, not a tiny percentage, but only a modest percentage makes substantial lasting changes. Okay? That has been analyzed and commented by all kinds of folks, and their commentaries are almost entirely incorrect. The notion is that they've got motivational blocks, they've got issues, they got conditioned in childhood to eat cookies with grandma, that's comfort food, blah, 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 or they've got histories that make them self-destructive, okay, for some reason. None of this is true. Okay, this is why, 20 years ago, I was hunched over a computer in Alan Goldhamer's basement, writing a book called The Pleasure Trap. And the story of The Pleasure Trap is this, that it is very difficult. The last sentence of that book explains that this is a difficult path. It's the most rewarding, but most difficult path to choose. And so this person in this practice that has what sounds like a very unusually good job, and that she's working with a doctor who's conducive and alert to this issue. That's as good as it gets. unless you're working at a high-powered inpatient transformational place like Fasting Escape or True North, where people pay their money and take their time to fly across the country and join the McDougall program or Engine 2 or et cetera. In other words, and there's a difference of the people that walk through the door of that practice who are a little bit interested and a little bit motivated, and people that come to one of our conferences, AJ, who are extremely motivated and are putting their money in their mouth at the same place, okay? And even those we know we have to help, and many people struggle. So don't despair. Your job is to sprinkle the informational dust and promise on each person, because we never know who may be the special one that actually grabs hold of this, and either today or sometime in their tomorrows will make a substantial effort on substantial change. We give them all the same message. The message is little changes will give you little improvement. A big change, though, I'm confident would give you a very big improvement and a new lease on life. Okay? And here's how you would do this, and this is where you can get some help. That's how we do it. And when they come back and they want to know more, then we know we've got one of the rare ones. But don't despair over the fact that most people won't, because this is a difficult and unusual path to choose.
Right. I just want, and again, we don't have time for this today, but one time you talked about how that I think people have to have a little bit realistic expectations that that some people have to be more stringent, just like maybe the gentleman that had the stroke, to get the same results. Right. Sure. I mean, and if they had a session with you, maybe you could identify their personality to see, because like me and I'm always getting called out and putting in the same group as Dr. Goldhammer for being perfect, but the way I eat, it's easy for me. And so there probably are people that have personalities for which an abstinence-based approach or a more A+ diet would work without getting in the ego trap. So maybe if you help them identify if they're that kind of person.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we also are trying to give instruction, Jen and I, on video. Jen's going to be doing some more video, essentially, because we want people to have in one place sort of a way to self-instruct so that they don't have to call us. Okay, so we want to have as much information as possible so that people can get moving in a good direction and have some new insights. But then if you can't, and if you need additional help, that's what we're here for.
Right. And Awanda said, while at True North, I had a session with Dr. Lisle, made a huge difference in understanding my personality versus those of people who have been rude to me. And the same thing, when I met Dr. Lisle in January of 2011, the first thing he did was my personality. And I never stopped having sessions. So here's the link if you want to try it. It's so great because it's so personalized to you. And it's not like going to a regular therapist where he's going to say, tell me about your mother. It's like exciting. It's fun. It's like, it's just the best. It's like going to Disneyland. If Dr. Lisle was a ride, he'd probably be Pirates of the Caribbean, because that's my favorite ride. So we like to, Dr. Lisle, there's so many more questions and I'm hoping you'll come back, but we do like to ask our guests a kind of fun question at the end, because then it gets people to feel like they know you a little better. And that is, during this time or anytime, people love to know what you're reading and if you're watching anything on TV or Netflix. I know I once heard you say you were a fan of Hawaii Five-0 and Bewitched, but is there anything you're currently watching or reading that you could share with us?
I am watching Lost, the show that was done, in the early 2000s, and I'm on season 1, about 9 or 10, and it's a fascinating show about a group of people that survived a plane crash. It's actually it's a remarkable stories involving it. It's magical processes, which I'm fine with. AJ, I know I'm a Virgo, but I have just enough openness that I'm willing to have some magical stuff in my fiction. And so it's got some magical stuff that there's a deeply moral, personal, transformational process of that the characters are attempting to sort of transcend some of their own limitations. And I think that it's so far I'm excited and interested, and besides the scenery is just beautiful.
Nice. So that's what you're watching. What are you reading? Because every book you've recommended to me you've recommended 3 so far. I think it's called The Rational Optimist, something like that, or Rational something or other. that one you recommended, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World, and Blueprint. And every book you've recommended to me has been an amazing book.
Yes, AJ, I read in streaks. So I've read recently Blueprint, and then also an extraordinary work called Human Diversity by Charles Murray. I don't actually recommend it. It's very academical, and it's a deep exploration of individual differences in human nature based on largely our genetic code. In other words, it's sort of a follow-up to Blueprint. Blueprint's also No Day at the Beach, but people who are maybe more academically oriented and would be interested in that sort of thing, these two things, Blueprint and Human Diversity, are extraordinary works of research and synthesis by two of our great minds. And so I've read those recently, and I'm still digesting them. When I read a big one, AJ, it's like eating a big vegan meal. You just got to sit there for a while and not do anything, just let it percolate. So that's what I'm doing right now.
That's amazing. Well, what's nice about Blueprint is it comes on Audible.
Yes, good. Oh, well, believe me, there's a lot of genes and single nucleotide pairs, and there's a lot of mumbo jumbo in there that I don't understand. But there's passages where you can glean what the message is that anybody could. So, but yeah, now I'm taking the break, and my mind's on watching beautiful young people do things in a beautiful place that are meaningful. That's what I'm doing. That's what loss looks like to me. So far, so good.
It's really fun talking to you, Dr. Lisle, and I hope you come back as soon as possible. And what I'll do is I won't announce it, and then I'll save these questions to give them priority.
Perfect. That's
okay.
Great.
Everybody, thanks so much for being here. Come back tomorrow at 11 a.m. when I will be interviewing David Carter. He is known as the 300-pound vegan. He is an NFL football player that is also vegan, and he's going to be amazing. And just know that occasionally a guest cancels, so sometimes somebody will sub, but that's who we have scheduled right now. And please go to beatyourgenes.com, maybe .org, and check out the podcast. My favorite episode is episode 161. And if you haven't read The Pleasure Trap, as Dr. Goldhammer says, it's a book that tells you maybe not what you want to know, but what you need to hear. Thanks again, as always, Dr. Lisle. It's so fun talking to you.
Pleasure, AJ. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye, everybody.